Hello everyone, welcome to my Batman Arkham City, Harley Quinn's Revenge DLC, no damage walkthrough. This is going to be the full DLC, because this DLC is roughly 30 minutes to 45 minutes long, and you'd expect for such a short piece of content that they'd actually do something very extraordinary with this DLC that'd be very different to the main game, but sadly that is not the case, and this is a very, very underwhelming piece of content that I honestly consider to be one of the worst DLCs I have ever played, because it just reuses so many assets from the main game when it comes to animations, when it comes to set pieces, and when it comes to music, and it is very disappointing. I really don't understand why Rocksteady didn't put in more effort into this DLC, but I guess they just ran out of ideas of what to do with this DLC, so this is what they're settling for. And you'll notice right away that I am playing as Robin. And I do not like playing as Robin. Just like with every other side character in the Arkham series, aside from Azrael, because Azrael is my favorite side character in the entire Arkham series, because he's just a reskin of Batman, and Batman is the best when it comes to combat and Predator abilities. But Robin is no exception in this case. He is a very bad hero to play as a side character. He is very limited in his combat and Predator abilities, and he doesn't have the best animations, because his animations are a lot slower compared to Batman. And I guess I'll explain Robin's capabilities right here. So the first thing I'd like to discuss about Robin is how slow he is compared to Batman, because he does a lot of flashy animations, and he has a lot of slow animations, and it really feels like he's just incredibly slow to do certain animations like the beatdown. Like, when I'm initiating the beatdown as Robin, there are some additional frames added to the initial startup animation for initiating the beatdown, and it just makes Robin feel very slow, and he's supposed to be younger than Batman, yet Batman feels way faster than him. And that's what I have to say about his normal strike animations. And then with his gadgets, Robin has a pretty useless array of gadgets, but I'll just explain them either way. So the first thing is he has a shuriken. The shuriken is pretty much the replacement for the batarang, and compared to the bolas that Catwoman uses, the input for actually using the quickfire feature on them makes sense, because you just tap L2 and Robin throws a shuriken, compared to Catwoman, where in order to quickfire bolas, you have to press L2 and square at the same time, like it's explosive gel, but bolas aren't the equivalent to explosive gel. So why is that the case with Catwoman and not Robin? That doesn't make any sense. But that's just the normal shuriken. And Robin also has access to explosive gel, but the explosive gel isn't as good as Batman's explosive gel for one particular reason. So you do have the ability to go into free flow focus as Robin, where everything is just slowed down, but Robin does not have the free flow focus gadget ability, where his gadgets are augmented and enhanced by being in slow motion, so he doesn't gain certain advantages like a greater explosive radius on his explosive gel when he detonates it in slow motion. And this is just really, really confusing. What is the whole point of putting in free flow focus if you're not going to give us the ability to augment our gadgets in the middle of free flow focus? I mean, I'm not saying it's a bad thing, though, because there is one stupid combat encounter coming up later on where you're dealing with so many enemies and a Titan Henchman, and being in free flow focus is crucial to maintaining a level of consistency that actually makes the fight feel like it works. But it's still a very dumb fight either way because of Robin's limited capabilities. So that's the explosive gel, and here are some of the new gadgets that Robin brings to the table. So one of his gadgets is the Zip Kick. So the Zip Kick is pretty much the replacement for the Bat Claw, only instead of pulling things towards himself, Robin will actually pull himself towards enemies and environmental objects. And the enemies are knocked down for a very long time when you use the Zip Kick. And he will either pull himself towards the enemies if you're far enough away, or if you're close to them, Robin will pull the enemy towards himself, and then he will knock him to the ground. And you can take advantage of that, but I don't recommend using it, because if you're pulling yourself into enemies, then you're pretty much pulling yourself into danger. And I never liked that about any kind of game system. It's the same with like corner takedowns in every Arkham game except for Batman Arkham Knight. Doing corner takedowns in every other Arkham game except for Batman Arkham Knight, you have to pull yourself out of cover when you press triangle to do the corner takedown, and you can be spotted by enemies around that corner. Whereas in Batman Arkham Knight, you pull enemies towards you when you do the corner takedown at a distance. And it makes the corner takedown so reliable in Batman Arkham Knight compared to the other Arkham games, where it's pretty much a detriment every time you commit to doing the corner takedown. And this is why I don't really use the zip kick that much. The other gadget that Robin has that is completely useless in both the combat and Predator sections is the Snap Flash. So the Snap Flash is a device that you can plant on an enemy's back in stealth or in the middle of combat to then manually detonate it to create this very wide explosion that is wider than the explosive jail's blast radius normally. But it's not that useful, and when are you ever going to get the opportunity to use the Snap Flash in the middle of a Predator encounter when Robin doesn't really deal with that many Predator encounters, and it's really only one Predator encounter that he deals with, but it's just better to just take out all the enemies with a silent takedown and then take down Harley Quinn that way. So that's what makes the Snap Flash very useless in Predator encounters. And then in combat encounters, you can press L2 and circle to do a quick fire Snap Flash, but I don't recommend it. The animation is way too slow because Robin has to waste time twirling enemies around and then planting the Snap Flash on the enemy's back and then actually letting them go so that the animation can complete. And during that entire animation, you are completely vulnerable to damage. So that's why I say don't use the quickfire Snap Flash in combat at all, and it therefore disincentivizes you from further partaking in Robin's combat. And that's a Snap Flash. It's a pretty useless gadget. You'll never see me use it. And the other ability that he has is the Bullet Shield. And the Bullet Shield is probably my favorite ability that Robin has, but not so much in combat though. In combat, you can press R2 twice in order to quickfire the Bullet Shield, and then you'll just ram into an enemy in order to knock him back. But don't let that go to your head. Don't think for 1 second that the ramming animation that you do with the Bullet Shield is a moving active frame period, because it only prioritizes one enemy. It has to work off the same basic principle of, oh, you have to aim at an enemy, and therefore you will only prioritize that enemy. Like the basic schema, like when you're aiming the batarangs and you throw them. And it's really stupid. Why do they think that is a good idea for a ramming animation? You have two enemies so close to each other. You then try to do the ramming animation to knock over both of them, and Robin only prioritizes one guy. It's so stupid. And it's really only useful in Predator encounters if you're trying to be aggressive. And in the A Flip of the Coin DLC for Batman Arkham Knight, I use the Bullet Shield a lot, because the first initial Predator encounter, I do it with a level of aggressiveness to make the encounter a lot more interesting, and the Bullet Shield just allows me to ram enemies and then knock them down when they're on the ground, and I can shield myself from gunfire. But if there are more than two enemies right next to each other, and I use the Bullet Shield, I am at risk for taking damage because of the fact that it's not a moving active frame period like every other game out there. If this was any other game, it would not be this limited. Why would they do that with the Bullet Shield? It's just like, when are you ever going to get the opportunity to ram multiple enemies with one hit from the Bullet Shield? You're not going to get that opportunity much. So there's really no justification you can give as to why they've designed the Bullet Shield where it only prioritizes one enemy. But that's why I mainly use the ramming ability in Predator encounters and not during combat encounters. And also, I don't think there's any kind of dynamic distance with the Bullet Shield's ramming ability. I think Robin still goes the exact same distance every time he initiates the ramming animation. There's no like ability to go shorter distances or longer distances. It's always the same distance, which is problematic in combat encounters if you overshoot enemies or you undershoot enemies. And oh, by the way, right here, this is a really stupid part of the DLC. So we're in the past right now, and we're playing as Batman. Batman is trying to interrogate 3 Harley informants in order to gain access to a third of a code in order to access Harley Quinn's secret base. And this one Harley informant right here is the worst Harley informant, because do you really see any possible way of making this even more consistent? I mean, this is such a tiny area, and there are 4 gunmen posted together that it's just so hard to isolate them. So you're playing the waiting game a lot with these enemies. And so that's why I decided to do a loud takedown right over there, and then I'm just going to wait and see what the enemies do, and I'm just going to pull them off. Or just do silent takedowns, which I'm going to do on this guy right here. But, like, the pathing on the enemies is completely random if you choose to commit to a loud takedown. Like, what are they expecting you to do? And not only that, but if you've seen the first part of my annoying slash dumb slash weird moments in the Batman Arkham series video, then you'll understand that I came across an issue where you see those two gunmen on the ground and how they're not a part of this Predator encounter. Well, I did a ledge takedown from that railing that you saw that guy going towards, the guy in blue, and I did the ledge takedown. Those enemies got alerted to me, and so the enemies that are tailored to this specific Predator encounter were able to find where I was and shoot me. And why? Why do they make it like that? And it's because this is a Predator encounter that's happening in the open world. And because it's happening in the open world, there is no telling which enemies choose to prioritize the sound that is generated when you decide to do a loud takedown. So that is a very broken design choice right there. But I managed to take down that Harley informant. And by the way, for the entirety of this DLC, it is all done in one attempt, because that's how simple and underwhelming this DLC is. It's this short, it is this underwhelming, and I was able to get it done in one attempt. And I was very nervous about the big combat encounter where Robin has to take on those enemies and the Titan Henchman, but I just committed to using nothing but the Shuriken, and I had to play the waiting game a lot with that Titan Henchman to ensure that I would be in range to do the Ultra Stun without any enemies providing a problem whatsoever. And I was able to get it done on the first try. But anyway, I was able to get that Harley informant done in one attempt, and now we're going to deal with the rest of these informants. And you saw right there that I accidentally got alerted by the sniper, and he came very close to shooting me, so I had to deploy a smoke pellet, and then I disabled this guy's sniper rifle, and now we're just dealing with this guy. And by the way, when you disrupt sniper rifles and they're trying to shoot at you, they will just be able to reload the sniper rifle, and then they'll immediately start shooting you to get out of that disrupted effect. So bear that in mind when disrupting snipers. But we've just interrogated this guy, and you cannot knock out these guys. This game does not have the whole system that Batman Arkham Origins introduced, where you can do a normal takedown animation or a ground finish animation in order to put the informant into a surrendering state, and therefore, you're not forced to limit yourself in combat, but this game doesn't have that feature, so you're going to be seeing me be as limited as possible in the combat and Predator scenarios to ensure that I do not knock out this guy. And it's so easy to knock this guy out as a force of habit if, say, for instance, you knock him out alongside other enemies and you commit to a multi-ground takedown. It's so easy to do because Rocksteady didn't have any brains when designing the informants in this game. I mean, you don't have any control over who Batman prioritizes, and why is it that you're going to present the player with this kind of problem, yet make it where it's possible to knock out the informants? And also, when you're in these combat encounters and you're limiting yourself in combat, it feels like you have a ball and chain on your leg. That's how limited it feels with this combat system when you're trying to make sure you don't accidentally knock out these informants, because Rocksteady were too lazy to program in a surrendering animation for these informants when Warner Brothers actually achieved this properly in Batman Arkham Origins. And if you've seen the first part of that series I was doing, I froze the Harley informant with a freeze grenade, and then I knocked out another gunman with my Batarang, and I was going in to do the ground takedown, but Batman prioritized the ice smash takedown on the informant, and so I failed. And if you knock out one of these informants, you will fail this part, and you'll have to restart from the last checkpoint, which wasn't the case because, like I said, I managed to get this DLC done on the first try. And you'll notice right here that I'm using the line launcher a lot. Because of the sheer amount of gunmen present on the rooftops in this part of the DLC, I'm trying to make sure that I don't glide too much, and I'm going to be very reliant upon the line launcher to control my movement and remain as low as possible to the ground. And right around here, you're safe to use the gliding ability, but I'm still committing to the line launcher because I haven't fully committed a lot of the enemy spawn locations on these rooftops yet. I mean, I know right here there aren't any enemies, aside from enemies on your left right there, right where the steel mill is. But once you get inside of the base, you won't have to worry about any gunners. And the rest of this DLC will take place inside of the steel mill. And I gotta say, as a DLC, this is very, very lacking. It's just reusing assets from Batman Arkham City. Whereas in the Cold Cold Heart DLC, you at least went inside Gothcorp and you got a chance to explore Wayne Manor. They at least put in a lot more of an emphasis on new areas compared to this DLC. And plus, they had additional choices of music, they had additional enemy types that were not in the main game of Batman Arkham Origins. Like, a lot more effort was put into the Cold Heart DLC for Batman Arkham Origins than in this DLC. And how is it that Rocksteady, the main developers for the Batman Arkham series, can be a lot more lazy in their DLC implementation compared to Warner Brothers, who delivered actual content with their DLC, with the Cold Heart DLC? And I'm pretty sure they also had a DLC for the multiplayer as well, which I need to talk about the multiplayer mode for Batman Arkham Origins, because I don't think it gets a lot of credit. I mean, a lot of people hate it because of the way the matchmaking works and with how unbalanced certain elements of the gameplay can be. But, you know, I thought it was a very fun piece of content. I thought it was an interesting idea in, like, being on the thug's side and then actually getting satisfaction from taking down Batman and Robin was very, very fun. I mean, some of the abilities were pretty overpowered, and, you know, a lot of people tended to use the shotguns and the sniper rifle. I mean, not really the sniper rifles, though. Sniper rifles were pretty useless in the multiplayer, but it was mainly the shotgun. There was one overpowered shotgun that you could use as a thug, and it just decimated enemies if you got close to them. It was a one-hit kill. And then you had certain abilities specific to the gangs, like that ultrasonic pulse that Bane's thugs have. When you have it fully upgraded, it is dangerous. It will instantly kill you. It goes through walls as well. And then you had the blimps that Joker uses in order to kill enemies at a distance. It was pretty effective. But I guess that was one of the main reasons why it was a pretty satisfying multiplayer, in my opinion, because there were so many overpowered abilities that it didn't feel like you could question the whole idea of imbalance, because you see a lot of overpowered designs and overpowered the game, basically, with this multiplayer mode, and you can bring up the whole question of imbalance, because imbalance is only apparent if you have underpowered designs complementing overpowered designs. Oh, and by the way, don't do this too quickly. For some reason, there are just times where one of the snipers will spot you right over here. Like, remember how I mentioned that the snipers have some pretty stupid periphery on their vision? That's one of them right there. Even though his laser is not even anywhere in my direction, he just spots me for no reason. But I'm able to avoid detection, and I'm going to be able to take out these two guys. You'll want to do it in this pattern right here. But the Arkham Origins multiplayer, in my opinion, was a lot of fun based on what I played. I mean, it sucks that the matchmaking was really stupid. You had to get a full lobby of 8 people. If you didn't have 8 people in a lobby and you had, like, 7 or less, you would never be able to start the match for Invisible Predator Online. And then they introduced that really, like, throwaway mode known as Hunter and Hunted, which nobody ever played, because it was just 7 people, and it ended so quickly. It's like, why even give a time limit for that kind of mode with how quickly it ends? There was no point in that mode. It had no creativity to it whatsoever. It was just a very generic multiplayer mode. And Invisible Predator Online is the mode that definitely demanded the most attention. But it was very interesting playing as both thugs and heroes. But, you know, the lag was really bad, and the connectivity issues were pretty bad as well in Batman Arkham Origins multiplayer. But overall, it was a pretty interesting concept for a multiplayer mode in an Arkham game. And Rocksteady didn't bring back multiplayer because they saw how much people hated it in Arkham Origins. And instead they introduced Arkham Underworld, which I think it's an iOS game. But why would you ever waste time with an iOS game for a game series? You put things on iOS, and the games are going to be very inferior. I mean, look at Arkham City Lockdown or Arkham Origins on mobile. Those two games are horrible. Arkham City Lockdown is just a bunch of missions, and they have no sort of replayability to them whatsoever, and leveling up especially was very, very pointless, and also with certain balancing issues as well. You were forced to use a lot of costumes in order to gain specific passive benefits that would balance out the combat. It was not as bad as in Arkham Origins Mobile. Arkham Origins Mobile was so dependent upon microtransactions because for some reason, when you went out on missions in Arkham Origins Mobile, you drained the stamina bar, and you either had to wait for a pre-selected amount of time in order to gain a bar back on your stamina bar, and there's about like 8 bars, I would say, or you had to pay with microtransactions to get a specific currency in order to restore your stamina bar. Why would they do that? Why would they favor this kind of model with a microtransaction-based system, and the combat in Arkham Origins Mobile is inferior compared to Arkham City Lockdown? I mean, it was cool that you could just tap the screen in order to do combat animations with attack animations, but Batman could not dodge compared to Batman Arkham City lockdown, he had to take the hit. And there are so many moments where it's just very easy for enemies to deal so much damage to you. And there are even grab animations that the bosses can do that deal immediate damage to you, mandatory damage. And with certain randomly generated missions, the randomly generated missions would increase in difficulty, or the enemies would take even more of a beating to go down. So you had to slot into the costumes in order to get passive benefits. Like, it's a pay-to-win game pretty much. It's literally the equivalent to a freaking mobile game using microtransactions, and we know how scummy microtransactions are. And it's just a freaking RPG game. That's what it is. It's so over-reliant upon leveling. I hate that game mode so much. I really hate it. I really hate Arkham City Lockdown and Batman Arkham Origins Mobile. They're really bad. And did you see that just then? We were just introduced to the Snap Flash mechanic, where you get behind enemies and place them on their back and then detonate them manually to trigger a controlled explosion, or you can place them on environmental objects to actually knock out enemies once they get near the enemy. But when are you ever going to use those two different mechanics? Never. And here, this is another great example of reused assets from the main game. So we fought a similar boss like this in Catwoman's DLC for Two-Face. Two-Face's boss format worked the exact same way, where he's active in the map, he has a health bar, and he has enemies patrolling. This is the same exact format as Two-Face from Batman Arkham City's main game, where Harley Quinn is stationed somewhere, she has a health bar, and you just have these enemies here. And it's the same concept of knocking out these enemies with silent takedowns, and then once they're down, you can prioritize Harley with impunity. No sort of problems whatsoever. And I'm going to make sure I take this path, and you have to be very quick on certain parts right here, but it's just, there are just a lot of moments where Robin gets stuck on the geometry, because a lot of the animations that Batman and the other characters do are very heavy animations, and there's also that where the game prioritizes the wrong animation. Like, I'm trying to roll, but Robin ended up climbing the ladder, but you have to make sure you take this guy out right over here. Make sure he doesn't get up the stairs, because if he does get up the stairs and you do the silent takedown, that guy will spot you, or he'll see the body and he'll mess with the pathing on the enemies. Make sure you take out this guy very quickly before he sees the body on the ground. And then you need to use the corner takedown on this guy that's coming down the stairs. The pathing on the enemies is always the same every time you restart the checkpoint. I didn't restart the checkpoint right here. This is on the first try, like I mentioned. But this is an incredibly simple fight, and once again, because of the fact that Harley Quinn is classed as a supervillain, you can't just take her out instantly. You have to beat down on her so many times with Square before she actually goes down. There's no point to this. It's just, you're wasting my time doing this. You're adding an additional couple of seconds for no other reason other than Harley Quinn's a supervillain, so we want to make that reflective in the gameplay for completely stupid artificial reasons. And that's the end of her. And this guy will always spawn in, because this fight right here uses the same format as Two-Face's fight, where if you enter combat and Two-Face or Harley Quinn is the last enemy remaining, enemies will spawn in to help them out. But they're too late for that. So we're just going to finally take out that last enemy, and we'll beat this encounter right here. And Robin will gain access to the key that will be used to free Batman. And we'll be doing that really stupid combat encounter involving all those henchmen and the Titan henchmen. And Robin's limited capabilities in combat just make the encounter drag on for way too long, and without the free flow focus gadget ability to complement the explosive gel, you will not be able to end this encounter very quickly. So, yeah, like I said, it's a very pathetic piece of content, and that's not even the most underwhelming part. We have a section coming up after that big combat encounter with Batman, and that feels even more underwhelming compared to this, and I'll explain it when I get the chance. But here is the really stupid combat encounter. There are so many different enemies here with different weapons, and you have got to take this nice and slow and build up your combo using the shurikens. But this guy is charging, so I need to use the free flow focus to get iframes in case he's charging at me, or just get out of his way. But I'm trying to make sure I get into free flow focus. And there we go, I'm in free flow focus, so I'm going to be able to attack everyone in slow motion. Do not use any kind of special takedown animation. You do not want to lose that free flow focus. Just remain in this state until the Titan Henchman is down. Introducing a Titan Henchman into this fight when you don't have any sort of special way to actually stun this guy without using the Ultra Stun. I mean, you can put snap flashes on the Titan Henchman, but the detection is awful. You have to get in so close to this guy, and I think this is an animation that does not complement the free flow, because it seems like you have to kill your combo in order to get the opportunity to place your snap flash on this Titan Henchman. Why? Why did they not think this through? And also, there's a bug with this big combat encounter right here. So do you see that metal fence that is just sitting along the wall right where I was? Well, there is a bug that can happen where you charge with the Titan Henchman, and he will actually run up that metal fence and get stuck in the geometry. And so will you. But I managed to get out of it. I have this footage saved in my annoying/dumb/weird moments part 1 video. But how on earth is that a thing? And also, do you see how the door behind me isn't loaded? And then also, that door that the Titan Henchman came out of, it hasn't loaded either. And when we unlock the bomb that Batman has to defuse, the bomb hasn't loaded in, but I'm still able to interact with it with the cryptographic sequencer and actually disarm it. Why are there issues with loading assets properly in this game, or in this DLC? This is a great example of Rocksteady not putting in a lot of effort into this DLC, clearly, if they're going to be making such basic errors like this. And I've come across very similar bugs in the Batman Arkham Knight DLCs, but they're way worse, because I've had crashes in the Flip of the Coin DLC. I've had moments where enemies just stand around and do nothing, and they take forever to actually get into the map. And also, I've had moments where characters are stuck inside of the geometry, and I have footage of this saved as well from the Amateur Family DLC. Like, why are the DLCs always going to be present with bugs, it seems, with the Batman Arkham series? It's like, not only are these pieces of content so underwhelming and just reuse so many assets from the main game, and they're completely uninspired, uninteresting, and contrived, but they're also going to be presenting with these really stupid bugs? Are you serious? It's just, it really doesn't make any sense to me how they could be this lackadaisical when actually designing the DLCs for these games. But anyway, I've managed to take out that Titan Henchman. You have to make sure that he is nowhere near any other enemies, so that you'll be able to do the Ultra Stun on that Titan Henchman without any risk of getting hit by enemies, and I lost my combo for no reason just then. That was really dumb. But yeah, that's the only way to actually stun the Titan Henchman as Robin, because he doesn't have... I mean, you can use Explosive Gel, but Explosive Gel without the increased blast radius provided by Free Flow Focus, it's going to be so hard to hit this guy whenever he's right near the Explosive Gel. Like, he has to be, like, right on top of the Explosive Gel for the normal blast radius to actually hit him and actually stun him and put him into that state where you can punish him with a beatdown. And look at this, the door still hasn't loaded, this bomb hasn't loaded at all, the panel hasn't loaded for me to interact with the cryptographic sequencer. And the door that the Titan Henchman came out of is still not loaded, so I don't know why this is happening right now. It happens every single time I play this DLC. I mean, it's just a minor issue, but it's still pretty obnoxious either way. But we now have this really contrived part of the game where we're just disarming bombs. That's all we're doing. We're disarming 3 bombs right here. Like, we've already done this kind of objective before when we were disarming jammers during Penguin's part of the main game, and they're just reusing it right here, just like how they reused Two-Face's boss fight format for Harley Quinn. And then after we do this whole bomb defusal sequence, we get a final encounter with Harley Quinn that is just so underwhelming, because all we're doing is just taking on a bunch of Wonder City robots that behave exactly the same way as the normal henchmen, and Harley Quinn will occasionally fire at you with her missile launcher, but her missile launcher is really fair, which is good design. But at the same time, you're not going to mix up the encounter with different enemy types. You're just going to give us reskins of henchmen that are just Wonder City robots. Talk about pitiful for a final encounter for a DLC. But this sniper right here, you'll want to disrupt his sniper rifle so you have plenty of time to take him out. And that's really the only challenging part to this, just that sniper who's very easy to take out. And yeah, there's just not much to really say here. It's just a very dull, contrived, boring section of the DLC that is just so unimaginative. Like, there are so many other ways they could have implemented some kind of objective that was original and it actually felt unique and it actually felt like it was something amazing. But no, they didn't do anything like that. And that's just how it is with this entire DLC. All of its gameplay format is just reused assets, and it doesn't even add anything interesting to the story. It doesn't add anything worth following up on in Batman Arkham Knight. And we get this whole scene at the end of this DLC where it seems like Robin has died, but what's the whole point of it? We already know he's alive. It just seemed really stupid for him to be killed that quickly in a DLC. And having to pay for a piece of content where a major event happens where a character dies in a DLC is a very scummy practice. Like, I remember Assassin's Creed Revelations DLC with the Lost Archives DLC. Now, I like that DLC. I like certain parts of Subject 16's memories, but, a lot of people hated that DLC when it was announced, especially with the reveal in that DLC that Lucy was actually a traitor and she was actually a Templar. And for them to confine a major story element that is so crucial to the Assassin's Creed storyline to a DLC that you had to pay for, there was a lot of people that chose to boycott that DLC because of the fact that it reserved a major story detail for a paid piece of content that should have been included in the main game. And, I never really thought of it like that. I just went with it. I mean, I kind of already knew that Lucy was a traitor before Assassin's Creed Revelations came out. But relating it to this point here with this DLC, it wouldn't make any sense for Robin to die in a paid piece of content that is so underwhelming. And I'm pretty sure if it were to happen, you would feel nothing because you'd just be so bored out of your mind from the amount of contrived objectives you had to go through for this DLC to get to that point. It's almost similar to what Servum17 described when he was talking about Star Wars The Force Unleashed 2, which was a game I used to like as a kid, but as I've grown, I've totally understood why he hates Star Wars The Force Unleashed 2. It is a really bad game. It has no focus in its story. It has very underwhelming environments. The enemy types are very boring to fight. The combat doesn't have any sort of evolution from Star Wars The Force Unleashed 1. And the side characters are barely used. Like, that game is so bad. It really is. I remember Servum17 made a whole tangent of if you were to have like 5 levels after the whole moment where Starkiller's just walking through that whole section with Darth Vader trying to attack him, like, you would probably not even be intrigued by the later parts of the game. You would just be so bored out of your mind due to the previous levels. And that's pretty much what you'd be getting here if Robin died in this DLC and you felt absolutely nothing because of the amount of boring stuff you're doing in this DLC that is just so uninspired and uninteresting. And now we have this encounter right here, which the Wonder City robots, you can just build your combo up and just knock them down with your quick batarangs and just take them out with the multi-ground takedown. It's all very simple. I can't believe they settled on this for a final encounter for a DLC. And I'm so glad this piece of content is ending because I hate this DLC so much. But stay tuned for my Batman Arkham Knight walkthrough. Thank you all for watching, and you take care now.